הוא מציל.
קהל קדוש, בוקר אור, דף יומי, שבוע טוב, חודש טוב. דף יומי מסכת עבודה זרה, דף למ"ח עמוד א' 38A1. Says the Gemara, we are going to be in the second line. Okay, it's the first line, the last word. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Amar Rav, 38A, למ"ח עמוד א'. Says Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak in the name of Rav, כל הנאכל כמות שהוא חי, אין בו משום בישול, בישולי עבדי כוכבים. Remember that there's a concept of bishul goy. What is bishul goy? You're not allowed to eat anything which the goy will come and cook, because then we're going to suspect that if you're going to do so, you might have a problem of getting married with them. However, though, if it's ne'echal kemot shu chai, zot omeret, it means to say, shata yechol le'echol et ze chai. You could eat it raw the way that it is, the same status that it is. So in such a fashion, there's no problem of bishul goy, even though now he's going to come to cook it. Because since anyway you could have eaten it without his input, so now the fact that he's going to do that, it's nothing. Besura matnu hachi, in Surah they taught like this. That means this is the, by the way, remember, there's always two conditions for bishule goyim. Number one, ne'echal kemot shu chai, which means that it's going to be eaten if it's going to be raw, so therefore there's no problem with bishul goy. That's why you're allowed to have hot water, right? You're allowed to have certain vegetables. Eggs, you're not allowed to, because eggs, you only eat it raw, alidei dachak, meaning only if you, mamash, you're a Kent or a Chazana, Paitan, or whatever it is. Normal people don't eat raw eggs. Okay, so therefore that's why by eggs...
As salmon fish, you don't have to...
so nowadays, it's true, we will speak about what happens nowadays with salmon. Because once upon a time, no crazy guy would eat fish raw. But nowadays that they have sushi, so now there's a whole question that maybe you're right. Maybe in Achanami, sushi, there's no problem anymore.
Rabbi, tuna is a big problem for Bishul Israel in the cans versus raw.
Yes, 100%. Even though Rav Ovadia wants to say that by tuna fish, the problem is not the actual, it's not that the Bishul, it's more because of the Hechal. The reason why is because Rav Ovadia wants to say that by the tuna fish, it's usually steamed. It's not going to be cooked. There's a difference between steamed and cooked. And therefore, he wants to say that there's not a problem mitzad the bishul. That means when we buy bishul Yisrael Sfaradim, it's not really because of the bishul, it's more because of the mashkiach tmidi. Because Yalkut Yosef brings this down, there's a Pi Rav Ovadia, he wants to say that he doesn't like the heter of the OU, that basically that they only check once in a few fish. Because basically, where do they do all this machinery and all these things? They go with a huge boat in the middle of the sea, right, in the middle of the ocean, and then they come and they bring in all these fish. And sometimes you could have dolphins and other fish as well, which might be a problem, which, again, they could get caught up in there with all the tuna. And then it becomes a very, very big problem. So therefore they come, they can it, they do everything there. Mamash, they have like an entire factory on sea. So because of that, if you don't have a mashkiach there, it's very problematic. So again, the OU, they're mekelim, they say no, that the majority and this and that and everything, they don't like that. That's why Rav Ovadia says, you need a mashkiach tmidi. Now you know that if you're getting the star K or any other type of a bishul Yisrael for Sfaradim, you know that there's going to be a mashkiach tmidi there. That's why by the tuna fish there's such halacha. But however, though, says the Gemara, bepumpadita matnu hachi, and pumpadita they taught it like this: Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak Amar Rav, kol she'eno ne'echal al shulchan melachim lelapovodovat. As long as it's not going to be eaten on shulchan melachim, en bo mishum of the bishul of the chovim. What's the difference between the two? Whether it's going to be because it's eaten raw or it's not ole al shulchan melachim, meaning it's not going to be on a king's table, right? So it says, the difference is dagim ktanim vardev daisa, small fish, mushrooms, and porridge, because these are not eaten raw, but they're not going to be at the royal table. Did you realize that we paskin both of them lekula, meaning if, for example, you're going to have something which is eaten raw, so apples, and other tomatoes and cucumbers and all these other types of food, right? There's a whole question also about about other things as well, whether it's going to be corn or hummus, like the gadineh hummus, right? The chickpeas and other things as well. But now when we're going to speak about the concept of oleh shulchan melachim, first of all, it doesn't have to be mamash melech. It could be important people who are chashuvim. Yeah, exactly. Chashuvim, lav davka mamash melech. But anything which is not oleh al shulchan melachim, there's no problem. So, for example, I'll give you an example, right? Cereals, right? Or French fries. Even though French fries, everybody wants the kids' menu. You could ask Ronen, they always want the kids' menu more than the regular adult menu. But it's not oleh al shulchan melachim, meaning if I'm going to come and I'm going to give you a chashuv meal, and you're going to give me French fries, I'm going to shoot you down. I'm going to say, what? This is what I'm paying for. If you're gonna give me roasted potatoes and the, in his, his fancy things, okay, so that's hashuv. Yeah. But French fries, that's what you're gonna give. So that's not considered oleh al shulchan melachim. That's why, by the way, there's a hetel by French fries that they say that you could, even though it's a machloket, some people say, listen, it's not oleh al shulchan melachim. That's only for kids. It's a kids menu, but that's not. You're gonna give that to a king. It's like, you understand? It's like זה לא בכבודו. Imagine
But
if
Rabbi,
Gener-
Rabbi, nowadays we go by what they eat in the White House.
No,
They
that's
eat
not true.
McDonald's.
Because even if they do it in the White House, everyone knows that it's the fast food. Fast food is not a leil shulchan melachim. He's eating it because he's got a craving. If you're going to tell me right now that the queen comes and she eats, if it's going to be a fish and chips or a special type of a dish, so then yeah, that could be. But if it's going to be the McDonald's with the French fries or whatever it is, that's not a leil shulchan melachim. Everyone knows that's fast food. And what's it called? It's called fast food. Fast food means it's not chashuv. If I'm going to pay you $350 for a plate at a wedding and you're going to serve me French fries at the main meal, I'm going to, go after you. You know that. You understand? So again, that's just the way that it is.
חייב אותו $300 למנה על פרנץ' פרייס.
Yeah, fine. Amar Ravasi, Amar Rav. Says Ravasi in the name of Rav. Okay? Dagim Tanim Meluchim. We're talking about small fish. It sounds like sardines,
Anchovies.
right? Small
Anchovies.
right? Anchovies. So, right? Meluchim, there's no bishul goy. Why? Because since they're edible in the way they are without cooking, that means you don't need to cook it. So therefore, again, there's no prohibition, right? Amar of Yosef, says of Yosef, in tzela'an oved kochavim, if he roasted them, somech Yisrael alem mishum eruv tavshilin. You can rely upon them for eruv tavshilin. Remember, eruv tavshilin is when you want to come and you want to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat. So when you want to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat, you have to have a food, right? And bread. You need bread and a tashil. We usually have an egg, an hard-boiled egg with matzah, right? Or with the bread, right? Usually when they're doing it is usually chagim. So many times they use matzot, especially for Pesach. Not with Sukkot, you could use it for a bread. So you use it for a challah and an egg. But technically you could use this roasted fish for your eruv tavshilin. And if you made it into a kiseh darsana, which is a dish, asur, you're not allowed to. Right? Why? Because it's a problem of bishul goy. Right? So therefore, he comes and he says, sorry. So he comes and he says like this. So it says the Gemara Pshita, obviously, if it's going to be a dish, right? It has flour, it has all these other things. So therefore, obviously, it's going to be prohibited. So says the Gemara, I would have thought to say hirsana is ikad, which means that the fish is the ikad, the main ingredient, right? And therefore, since it does not apply to the main ingredient because it's salted, and it's edible the way that it is, everything else, even though it should be permitted, because it's like batel. So you can say kamashmalan kimcha ikad. The way that they used to make it was they used to take these anchovies and put it with like a type of a flour. You know, like sometimes they make them like breaded with the flour. So therefore, I would have thought to say, since the main dish is the fish, and the fish you could eat it the way that it is, therefore there's no problem. Kamash Malan comes teach that at the end of the day, the kemach is going to be ikar. Okay, until here we're clear?
Yes.
Very good.
Like the schnitzel.
Yes, exactly. Like it's the schnitzel, exactly. Meaning you have like the breaded, and then you have the how do you call this? The actual chicken in itself. So which one is the ikar? Which one is the main one? And which one is not the main one? Okay? Fine. Next. Now we go as follows. Says the Gemara. Yeah. Amar Rav Bruna, Amar Rav. Says Rav Bruna in the name of Rav. Oved kochavim sheitzit taur ba'agam. Imagine right now, an Oved kochavim comes and he lights up a swamp. Now you had a whole bunch of grasshoppers there. Now those grasshoppers, you remember that even in Morocco, there's a certain grasshopper that was kosher, right? They used to have chocolate-covered grasshoppers, right? It was a
Mamaged David.
Yeah, exactly. Delicates. Yeah. So what happens is all the grasshoppers that are in that pond now become prohibited, right? Now he comes and he says, why? Hechidami says, why? Why is it asur? If you're going to tell me it's because you don't know which one it is, if it's a kosher one or non-kosher one, so what do I care if the goy was the one that lit the the entire thing. What do I care? Even if it was a Jew. Even if a Jew comes and he lit this pond, and now you don't know which one's kosher or non-kosher grasshoppers, obviously it's asur. Afilu Yisrael Nami, even if the Jew does it, it's going to be asur. Ela mishum bishul of the kochvim, but rather because of bishul goy. So ki agav nam yasir, says the Gemara, is that going to be asur? Why? It was unintentional. Meaning, if you ask the goy right now, why did you light this on fire? Is he going to tell you because he wanted you to have smoked grasshoppers? He didn't have that on mind. Right? If he comes and he starts singeing the hair of a slaughtered animal to remove the hair. So you're allowed to eat even from the tip of the ears. Right? Why? They used to come and put a little bit of fire so that way you could take off the hair. Now, the purpose of doing that is not to cook, it's to remove the hair. So even though it's going to cook, if that's not his kavanah, if that's not his intention, it should be permitted. Almas, you see from here, he's trying to take off the hair. He just wants to come and reveal whatever's inside of the, he wants to uncover the ground of the meadow. He doesn't want to roast the grasshoppers. You understand? So therefore it comes out that this is going to be a question. By the way, you should know, I once heard an incredible shiur from Rav Asher Weiss. And Rav Asher Weiss said, you know what would be the nafkamina in such a case? Do you know how the shawarma works? The shawarma is a big shawarma, which is on a pole, on a skid, on a skewer, yeah? And it's going around on the fire. So he comes and he says, imagine right now I come and I get that I want to have it, that it's Bishul Yisrael according to Sfaradim. So it's not just enough that he turned on the fire, the Jew. I want to make it Bishul. So now how do I do it? So now what happens if you have a goy there, that he's coming and he's cutting off the shawarma to serve it to you? So let's say I put the shawarma in. So it's Bishul Yudi, but now he's cutting it off. When he's cutting the outer layer, what happens is that he's giving you the shawarma. It's kosher lechatchila. But now the problem always is that once you cut out the outer layer, what happens to the inner layer? It starts cooking.
No,
It's
it's
not
cooked,
cooked.
but no, like supposed to, yeah.
It's not really cooked. It starts the cooking process. You understand? So what happens? So now,
No, Rabbi,
Yes.
before you serve the shawarma work in maybe 1 hour on the thing, you know?
okay.
So basically, it's ready, but it's not ready to eat. You know, it's like you can eat
No,
it,
so
but
then
it's
that's the
not.
question. That's the question, because was it already a third cooked or not? Because remember, if it's still not a third cooked, you have a problem now of cooking it. So when you're cutting the other side, right? I'll tell you just the reason why I'm bringing this down, because he basically said like this. Let's say it's a goy that's cutting off the shawarma to serve it to you. The first piece of shawarma, mutar. Why? The Jew put it in, and it was the outer layer. Now the goy comes, he cuts out the outer layer, he puts it in your lafa, and he gives it to you, Mordechai. Now the second person there is Baba Haki. Yeah, he's over there, the second person. Now the question though is 1 second. How did that outer part now be revealed? Because the goy cut the outer part, and now the inner part becomes revealed. So the goy just caused the cooking of Baba Haki shawarma. But he said, but that wasn't his kavanah to cook it. His kavanah was just to cut off the first layer to give it to Mordechai, not to give it to Baba Haki. He didn't care about the second part, which was given to Baba Haki. So therefore, that's the same yesod that we're speaking about here. Right now, what is the purpose of the goy? Is the purpose of the goy that he wants to right now do something else, or does he want to cook for you? If he wants to cook for you, it's a bishul of bishul goy. But if he doesn't want to cook for you, so it's not a bishul goy.
No, because sometimes Jackie right. Let's say you told them, give me 5 shawarma. So he cut for you a lot of meat, and then he put you on the plancha.
Yes. Sometimes
On
he
the
does that.
on the tray, on the pan. Yeah.
No, but it's a plancha. It's he puts it on the yes.
It can be
100%. So then that could be a problem of bishul goy, yes, because when he puts it on the plancha, that might not be according to Sfaradim. Again, it's not a problem bishul goy for Ashkenazim, because for them, the second that they turned on both fires, there's no problem. But for Sfaradim, there could be a problem. Okay? Okay, very good. Let me see what else. Okay. So now, right, says the Gemara as follows. Says the Gemara, right? So obviously he didn't have the kavanah to do it. So says the Gemara, if that's not the kavanah, that he didn't have the kavanah to do it, right? So then what's the problem then? What's going on then? So he comes and he says as follows, right? Obviously he didn't have the kavanah. So says the Gemara, Leolam de lo yada hayta over tameh. Really, he didn't know which one was kosher grasshoppers, which one was non-kosher grasshoppers. But the story just happened with a goy. Meaning in a chanami, really be'emet over there, we were not talking about bishul. Because be'emet mitzad bishul, there was no isur on bishul. He never had kavanah to be mubashel. He didn't have the intention to cook. But it was really talking about the story with a goy. So therefore we mentioned the goy. But really be'emet, even if a Jew came and he lit this fire, it would have also been a problem because you don't know which one's a kosher grasshopper and which one's not a kosher grasshopper. So Gufa says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chanan Barami, Amar Rav Pedat, Amar Rav Yochanan. Says Rav Chanan Barami, name Rav Pedat, name Rav Yochanan. Hay Oved Kochavim de Charik Resha. An Oved Kochavim comes and he's heating up the head of the animal to take off the hair. So Sharul Michal Mina, you're allowed to eat from it, even from the tips of the ears. Now, why do we bring down the tips of the ears? Right, we remember the tips of the ears are the easiest to cook. Yeah? By the way, you should know that, I don't know if you ever lived in a cold country. I lived in Canada. When I lived in Canada, the first part, which is the most dangerous, is your ears. Because without realizing it, your ears can freeze and they can actually break off. Mamash, they could freeze. It's the most delicate part, right, is going to be the ears. So it's the easiest to cook and easiest to freeze. Yeah? So Amar Ravina comes and he says, Hilkach, therefore, when you have this idol worshiper that he throws a wet peg into the oven and fires the oven to try out the peg, the kavar ba'Yisrael kara, and a Jew had earlier buried a raw gourd in the oven, meaning he put something in the fire beforehand, and it's now cooked. Shapidami, it's still you're allowed to eat it. You're allowed to eat this kra. Everyone knows that the kra is like the gourd. In English, we use it for the night of Rosh Hashanah. Kra is pumpkin, exactly. Blat, pumpkin, gourds. So says the Gemara, Pshita, obviously, you might have thought to say that what? That really be'emet, the idol worshiper wanted to cook the utensil, the peg. But really be'emet, all he wanted to do is to strengthen the utensil. Meaning, many times when you have a utensil which is moist, if you want to make it stronger, you take out all the moisture inside of it. And by taking out the moisture inside of it, it's called a lachut, right? A lachluchit, bifnim. So therefore it becomes stronger. So niya yoter chazak. Okay? So Amar Rav Yudah Shmuel says in Shmuel, Hiniach Yisrael basar al gabe gechalim. If a Jew placed meat on top of coals, uba oved kochavim, pipech bo. So comes the idol worshipper, and he turns it, right? Misobev right? He turns it. Mutar, the meat is going to be permitted. So says the Gemara, right? Again, Hechidami, what's the case? Right? This sounds like the case of the shawarma that we were talking about. But here we're not talking about a shawarma because that's like a new invention of the machine going around. But it basically
hamburger,
exactly,
steak.
Hamburger, steaks. You've got meat on the thing, and then he turns it around. So if you're going to tell me if you wouldn't have turned it around, it wouldn't have gotten cooked. Shita, obviously it's asur, right? Elalav, it wouldn't have been. So then why is it going to be mutar? So he says it's bishul goy. And so the Gemara, what are we talking about? If he wouldn't have turned it around, it would have cooked in 2 hours. But now that he turned it around, it cooks in 1 hour. So the time I would have thought to say that the fact that he quickened the cooking, right? He's making it quicken the cooking. So Kamash Malan comes teach you that it's still permitted. Meaning, I don't care that he's quickening the process as long as they already cooked it enough, it doesn't matter. And this is very, very important to halacha. So for example, you remember I already told you the eggs. Let's say right now you come and you put the eggs into the machine, right? And it's cooked already 1/3. The goy could do whatever he wants after that. Even if he's going to quicken the process. And beforehand it was going to be number 1, and now he put it to number 5, and now it's going to be ready in 2 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Doesn't matter. Once it's cooked, beheter, memaher bishulo is nothing. Quickening the process is nothing. So says the Gemara, how could that be? Right? Yes, Meaning like this. Our entire purpose is Ma'achal ben Drusai. Ma'achal ben Drusai, remember, ben Drusai is who? Ronen. Who's ben Drusai?
Shuded.
Shoded.
Yafe meod. He was a bandit. He was a mafionaire. Yeah? This guy, he would never eat his food right. Why? He was always on the run. So since he was always on the run, so therefore he couldn't do it. So what? He always had to eat it when it was raw. So says the Gemara, I thought that everything had to do with Ma'achal ben Drusai, no Ma'achal ben Drusai. If it was already cooked 1/3, so then that's Ma'achal ben Drusai. And if it's not cooked 1/3, it's not Ma'achal. So then it's going to be a sur. Everything depends on Ma'achal ben Drusai. So answers the Gemara, Hatam over there, could go to besilta. Right? We're talking about a case where you place the partially cooked food in a basket. The shaklo and then he came and he put it in the oven to complete the cooking. So since the initial cooking was finished and he began a new act of cooking, so therefore it's going to be asur. But in the case of, right, he says in the case of Rabbi Yehuda where the cooked was on the fire, so then there's no difference how little the food was initially cooked or not. So Tanya Miyachi, we also learned this in a Braita, also the same thing. He could put it, the Jew could put it on top of the coals, right? And then the goy could come and stir it until he comes back from the synagogue or for the Bet HaMikdash. We don't have to be concerned. The same halacha, a woman could put a pot on top of the fire, and then the maid servant, 38b, למ"ח עמוד ב'.
ומערבבת.
ומגיסה, she's going to be מערבבת זה, she's going to be מגיס את זה, she's going to stir it, עד שתבוא בית המרחץ ובית הכנסת, until she's going to come back from the bath.
זה כמו שהגוי עושה לנו לצ'ולנט.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Right? But here, did you realize even the Jewish woman who was coming back from the Beit HaKnesset, right? So he says, we don't have to worry about anything. So says the Gemara, one second. So that means it's coming out that there's not going to be a problem. That means they can complete it. As long as we started the process, they could complete it. Correct? Okay. So we're going to ask the following question. What's the halacha right now if the Oved Kochavim put it on the fire, and then we were the ones that turned it over? Meaning beforehand we were talking about that the Jew put it on the fire, and then the Goy finished the product. Now we're talking about the opposite. The Goy put it on the fire, and we finished the product. So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak kal v'chomer. Gam lo v'yodu kochavim mutar. He says, 1 second. If a Jew put it on and the Goy finished it, and it's still mutar, kal v'chomer if the Goy put it on and we finished it, kal v'chomer that it's going to be mutar, right? Kal v'chomer. Right? Obviously, it should be mutar. So Itmar Nami was also stated. Amar Rav Chanan Amar Rav Yochanan. It says Rav Yochanan. Amar Rav Chanan Amar Rav Yochanan. Ben Sheniach Ovdei Kochavim v'Apach Yisrael. Doesn't matter whether it was a goy that put it, and he pech Yisrael or Ben Sheniach Yisrael v'Apach Ovdei Kochavim. Mutar. It's going to be permitted. The only time that it's a sur if the beginning and the end was done by a goy. The beginning and the end was done by a goy. But as long as one of them was done by a Jew, whether the Jew started the process and the Goy finished it, or the Goy started the process and the Jew finished it, it's going to be okay. The Amar Ravina says, what is halakha? When you have a bread where the Goy came and he put the oven, he started the oven, and the Jew baked in it, or the opposite, the Jew started the oven and the Goy baked in it. Or the Goy did it and the Goy baked in it. And then the Israel came and he was mechateh and he stirred the fire. Shapit done.
Is the same din bishul about baking? Let's say pizza.
That's exactly what we're saying right now, Kvodo. Yafeh meod, she'ela meod tova. That's exactly what we just said now. Here we added in a little nekuda to do with baking. The baking is different than bishul. Chazak u'baruch. Bishul, according to Maran, the Sfaradi has to come and put the food on the fire. זה לא מספיק לחטות או להליק את האש. By the meaning to stir it or to start the fire. However,
shlish bishul.
Exactly. However, though, to do with baking, it's enough that the Jew just comes and does something in the fire. That's already enough. And the reason why Maran is posek lekula is because he says that since we all live off bread, right? So therefore, we were more lenient in bread. And therefore, even by doing a little minimal amount just to show that we are participating in the baking, we're going to show ourselves, distance yourself, right? I cannot have chatanut. You can't get married. So therefore, just a little bit. So therefore, even if you're just going to put some coals inside, or you're going to stoke the fire, you're going to do something, that's already going to be enough. Okay? Clear until here?
Good.
Okay? Tadlik et ha'esh. Yeah, dag maliach. Yeah, he says like this. Salted fish. Okay, you guys are listening? Salted fish. Chizki ashari, and Rabbi Yochanan says it's a sur. Beitzat sluya, roasted egg, but Kapara says it's mutar. Rabbi Yochanan says it's a sur. So kiata Rav Dimi came and he said, Rabbi Yochanan asar. So you keep on seeing there's machlokot. What about by the eggs, or what about also by the salted fish? Rabbi Chia Parva ikla leberesh kaluta. So Rabbi Chia Parva, he went to the beresh kaluta, the house of Resh Kaluta. Amnul, and they said, Beitzat sluya mai. What's halacha regarding a roasted egg? Samalu, he told him, Chizkiah bar Kapara, Rabbi Yochanan asar. He said, listen, it's machloket. Chizkiah bar Kapara says it's mutar. Rabbi Yochanan says it's asur. Then dvarav shelecha b'imkom shnayim. You always have two against one. You go by two. Amalu Rav Zvid said, Rav Zvid lo tetzitu le. Don't listen to him. Hachi amar Rabbi. This is what Rabbi says. Alichataka v'ted Rabbi Yochanan. We passed like Rabbi Yochanan. Ve'ashkuyu anagota dechala v'nach nafsheh. So they gave Rav Zvid a cup of vinegar to drink, and he passed away. Oh. Oh, wow. It says over here, they gave him a stringent opinion, so they went and they killed him. Paman. Okay, there's other explanations also. How they assassinated Rav Zvid. They gave him vinegar to drink, and then he died. But anyway, okay, let's continue. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. Okay, akafrisin, these are husks that they cover the caper berries. So you remember in Smichat Chaver, we were learning about caper berries. Vakaflutot, or leeks. Vamalatia, this is metalia. Right? What is this? Number 19. Okay. The Gemara is going to explain. Right? Vachamin, hot water. Klayot, parched foods. Shelahen of the goyim. Mutarin are going to be permitted. Beitzat sluya is going to be asur. Shemen, to do with oil. Rabbi Yudan Nasi, ubetinon, nimnola vetiru. So Rabbi Yudan Nasi was one that permitted the oil of the goyim. Betanya, we learned in the Braita. He amlate pshalia, he shata. It's all the same thing. Hemetalia and pisalia is all shatia. What is shiata? So he says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. He comes and he says, Harbash arbaim shanin dinafi kai uvda de Mitzrayim. It was 40 years since this came out of Mitzrayim. Rabbi Yochanan didei Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said himself, Yishitin shanin dinafi kai uvda Mitzrayim. There was 60 years since it came out from Mitzrayim. Velo pliga beresora machloket. More bishne, more bishne. One master refers to his years, another one according to his years, meaning each one according to his age. So mighty bizra de karpasa, they would bring cress, seeds of cress. Ubiza the kitna, seeds of flax. Ken kutna. Ubiza the shviltan, seeds of fenugreek. So mamash, we're talking about a whole bunch of seeds. Mamash, semiyas, seeds. Garinim, no garinim.
Seeds,
okay. V'tarule bahadi adadi b'fashuli. They would soak them together. As the ishru otam biyachad, shriya, right, in lukewarm water. V'shavkule de mekabel, and then they would leave it there until it began to grow. Umayti chatzvi chate, they would bring new barrels. They would fill it with water. And then they would soak a clay in them. And then they would attach it to the clay. They would go into the bathhouse. And by the time they left the bathhouse, they would be able to eat them. Where they would become chilled from the hair of their heads to the toenails of their feet. Mamash, it would cause like a shiver. It was mamash like it was So Ravashi says, Amali Rebchanina mi'im. He told me these words. It doesn't make sense. It's impossible to put these things. It just doesn't make sense. Okay? Something said with words. So Tana Rabbanan, we learned to the Braita, Hakuspan shel Ovdei Chochavim, this date mark. What is date mark? The refuse of the dates. Meaning after they make the beer, they would have like the refuse, the garbage, the leftovers. So he says, Hakuspan shel Ovdei Chochavim, if the hot water was boiled in a large part, it's going to be a sur. It's a small part, it's going to be mutar. What is a small pot? If a bird, which is a small bird, cannot fit in it. So says the Gemara, maybe they dismembered it and placed it in the pot. So he says, they can't even put the head of the tzipor dror. It says the Gemara, it's going to be mutar. So he says, la kashya. Ha k'mandaman noten tam livkam as asur, k'mandaman noten tam livkam mutar. We know that there's a concept of Noten Dam Lifkam. Noten Dam Lifkam means it's giving a bad taste or a good taste. So he says if it's going to be giving a bad taste, is that mutar or asur? According to Mandamar that it's asur, so it's going to be asur. But according to Mandamar it's mutar, so you're allowed to derive benefit from over here. But it's a dead bird basically that's giving you this taste. So Amar Rav Sheshat says Rav Sheshat, Haimishcha shlika daramai asur. The boiled oil of the Aramaim, the Armenians, they're going to be prohibited. Okay, so he says here, Amar Rav Safra, says Rav Safra, Le'may nechushla. What are you going to suspect? If you're going to be that you're going to suspect that he's going to mix wine in it. So misra sare. So then for sure it's going to become bad. Mishum bishul goy. If it's going to become as a bishul goy, it's eaten raw. Nechal kamo chai. Mishum bishul lego. If it's going to be because of giulei of dekochavim, which means that it's the pots of the dekochavim. Notetam livkam mutar. Remember that a pot of Avodah Kochavim, unless it was used the same day, it's called Noten Tam Livgam. And Noten Tam Livgam, but diavad, it's going to be okay. Okay? So they came and that's why they asked from Ravasi. Right? What is the law concerning these cooked dates of the remains? Regarding the sweet ones, you have no question. Because for sure they're going to be permitted. Regarding the bitter ones, you should also have no question. But for sure it's going to be asur. So when is it going to be the question? The in-between dates, meaning it's not sweet nor bitter. And it's not eaten raw, right? It's only eaten raw in extreme circumstances. So this is what I told you before, you remember? That whenever it's going to be in extreme circumstances, do you still have any sur of bishul goy or not? Because you could eat it raw, but it's not mamash, it's not good to eat raw. It's better that you always cook it. But you could technically eat it raw. So he says, Amar lehu. So he told him, what's the question? The Rabbi Asar, right? Umanu Levi. Rabbi said it's going to be asur. And who's Ravasi referring to? Rabbi. It's Levi. So shetita, if you're talking about now shetita, which is cooked by a goy, Rav says it's going to be mutar, and Shmuel Levi says it's going to be asur. Bechite v'sare, when we're talking about wheat and barley, according to everyone says it's going to be permitted. Regarding lentils with vinegar, everybody says it's going to be asur. When we talk about lentils with water, so more savar gazin and hatuha. Some people say they make a gezerah, a decree, and some people say we don't make a decree. And some people saying regarding lentils with water, everybody says that it's asur. One is a machloket only by wheat and barley, because some people say that we make a decree or not make a decree. Do we make a decree or not on other things, like, to do with bishul goy? Right? Nowadays, by the way, there's a lot of differences. Usually, you should know, we are much more lenient in Chutz La'aretz than in Eretz Yisrael. Because in Eretz Yisrael, since it's so easy to have bishul Yehudi, right, bishul Yisrael, so therefore they're much more stringent. But for us, we're much more lenient. For example, cans of corn. Corn, right, if you even take corn on the cob, it does go through some type of a process of cooking, right? Whether it's going to be corn, whether it's going to be chickpeas, whether it's going to be a whole bunch of different things also. Now, the question is that a problem with bishul goy? Because you're buying it with an OU, but is that a problem with bishul goy or not? You understand? So that's the question. Again, usually we're more lenient. Okay? So Amar Rav comes and he says, right? He comes and he says as follows.
שומע הרב?
Now
כן,
yes.
אני שומע, one second.
כן.
So says the Gemara, we're on the bottom of Lamed Chet Amud Bet. Yeah, the bottom of Lamed Chet Amud Bet 38b.
Business, 5,500
Yeah, he comes and he says like this. You guys listening? He says like this. He says, Amar Rav comes and he says, right? Tre mine shtita shadar Barzilai Giladi David. You know Barzilai Giladi, he sent two types of shetita to David HaMelech. תכתיב משכב וצפות וכלי יוצר חיטים ושעונים וקמח וכלי יפול ועדשים וכלי. So each of them are two different types of parched kernels. Okay, again, two different types of things that he sent to David. And nowadays, they take out the baskets upon baskets full of these things to the marketplaces of Narda. And nobody pays attention to Avodah Shmuel. That means basically they're lenient, meaning nowadays they're more lenient. Even if once upon a time it was not a problem. Right? It was a problem. Nowadays they're lenient. וכבשים שדרכן לעטה בתוכן יין, and we're talking about preserves, which they are accustomed to put wine and vinegar. אמר חזקיה says, דושנו עולה שדרכן, that's only if they're accustomed to putting it. אבל בידוע, but if it's known that they put it, you're not allowed to even have anah. Remember that all these things, it's going to be asur banah because it's wine. Remember, vinegar comes from wine. You're not allowed to have benefit from any type of the wine of the goyim. So ask the Gemara, what's the difference between muryas? The Sharo Banamana that they did permit it and they did permit it. So he says, no. Hatam labure zuama. Muryas, the wine there is only to take away the bad flavor. Hechal metuka, meaning like this. Are you putting the wine to put a good taste or just to take away a bad taste? If it's to put a good taste, it's a subana. If it's just to take away something negative, so therefore it's going to be okay. Rabbi Yochanan says, even if it's known that wine or vinegar is added, it's going to be mutar. He says, what's the difference between muryas according to Rabbi Meir that it's going to be asur banah, right? So says the Gemara on the top of Lametet Mudalev 39a, there we know the mamashu, meaning you still see the essence or you don't see the essence. If you have the essence of the wine, so therefore it's going to be asur. If there's no essence of the wine, so therefore it's going to be mutar.